This is TWiT.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for some brown liquor.
Yes. Let's try and pronounce some names there. The easy one on the bottle is Tobermory, which is a town actually on the Isle of Mull. The word underneath there, you can see it. It's Ledaig.
Ledaig.
It's actually pronounced Ledaig.
Ledaig.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Oh, they got nerves.
I'm sorry. Why are we even discussing that?
Yeah.
Obviously.
Which is Gaelic for safe haven. So this is one of the very oldest distilleries in Scotland. It's on the Isle of Mull, and that's one of the Inner Hebrides Islands, the second largest island, the largest being Skye, which is where Talisker is. Mull is just north of Jura and Isla. So, which should Isla being the third largest island. There's only about 3,000 people on the island. It's not very heavily populated. It's kind of tough country there. Although there's been farming there, they found evidence going back into the Bronze Age. So there have been humans around that area for sometimes. There's a remains of a fort called Donegal, which made me think like Lord of the Rings immediately.
It's spelled Sade, but it's pronounced Goggle.
Yeah, but it's from like 600 BC, so predates the Romans, and it's been so. But the Tobermory was formed as a fishing port in 1788, and then a fellow by the name of John Sinclair, who was a kelp merchant because they were farming kelp in the waters off of the Mull Sound. Wanted to establish a distillery, and so he put together Ledaig in 1798. So only 10 years after the town was formed, they had their one and only distillery. It was probably a mistake because this distillery has a very checkered history. So he started that up in 1798. It was shut down by 1837 and stayed shut down for 40 years.
Wow.
He dies. A new owner takes over in 1878. It changes hands several more times after that. The Distillers Company, which eventually becomes Diageo, takes it over in 1916, mid-World War I, when there's not enough grain to make any whiskey anyway. At the time, they had a lot of light-up barrels that they were making into a blend they called Old Tobermory, although the name of the distillery was Ledaig. Then, of course, 1930 hits. Prohibition, the U.S. market tears everything apart, so it shuts down in 1930 and doesn't reopen again until 1972. So another 40-year shutdown. Like, I'm really stretching that they put 1798 on the bottle, right? Like, you guys were closed for almost 100 years.
With a few intermissions.
So the new group that takes it over again calls the Ledaig Distillery in Tobermory, and then 3 years later they shut down. And then 1979, the Kirkleven Property Company, which is a consortium of a Liverpool shipping company and also a company that makes sherry and some other overseas interests, now fully call it the Tobermory Distillery. And they stop referring to Ledaig, which nobody can pronounce anyway. And they operate for a whole 3 years. In 1982, they shut down again.
Oh my God, it's snake pit.
Yeah, and having not been able to pay their taxes, they actually sell off the rack house across the road from the distillery, which gets made into apartment buildings. And then 10 years later, Burns Stewart Distillers, these are the folks who own Bunnahabhain and Deanston, which is also around Islay and Campbellton, take it over in 1993. So this is proper whiskey operators that know what they're doing. They are making a sweet single malt there that they use in their blends. So Burns Stewart makes a blend called Black Bottle, and they're using it for that. But they decide to start making Ledaig in 2007. So bring back this peated whiskey. Burns Stewart gets acquired by the Distill Group, which is out of South Africa. They're the ones who actually own Heineken, and they scale the facility up. So now today they can put out about 1 million liters a year, which is not a huge distillery, but it's substantial. They run on pretty standard. They were for many years kept their iron mash tuns, but they switched up to stainless steel lauters, which are more efficient. They use Doug fir washbacks, only 4 of them. They have 2 sets of stills. And unlike most distilleries, their wash and spirit stills are about the same size. They're both 16,500 liters, which is considered in the smaller side. But normally the wash still is about 50% bigger than the spirit still because of yields. But the large spirit still was an intentional thing. I suspect it's lost into history. They probably guys got a deal on the size, but it makes for a slower reflux. So it puts some character into their style of whiskey. Depending on which, they really make two different products. They age in both bourbon casks and sherry casks because they have no storage. All of their barrels actually get shipped to the Deanston storage, which is on the mainland. So it's 100 miles and a ferry ride away. Again, this distillery is remarkably questionable. And then they make two different whiskeys. They make Tobermory, which is a unpeated single malt, and they make Ledaig, which is a peated malt. Now, it makes sense to make a peated malt on the Inner Hebrides Islands where the trees don't grow particularly well, but there's lots of peat. So it's inexpensive. That's your cheap fuel for drying your malt, which is why the Skye and Islet, all these islands make peated malts. These days, of course, you have other ways to make heat with electricity, so it's not that big of a deal. But if you're going to make both a peated and an unpeated whiskey in the same set of stills, you have to clean out the still after making peated whiskey, or everything tastes like peat. And so literally the Tobermory Distillery does a split run, 6 months of making Tobermory, the unpeated stuff, and 6 months of making Ledaig with peat in it. And it takes 2 weeks to clean the distillery to do the switch.
Wow.
Why?
Why?
But they just sort of gotten to this place. Now, and what's legit about this? This is a 10-year-old peated whiskey. It's not as pale as an Ardbeg 10. It's got a little more color. They don't color. They don't chill filter. This is a normal peating. It's about 30 to 40 parts per million of phenolonic content. That would be considered a normal peating, as opposed to something
not much, is it? Wow.
It's normal. It's a normal medium peat, right? Like Octomore can be 150, and that's like a burnt ashtray got smacked into your face, right? Like you don't want that. But this is nicely peaty. Like this is, we've got the fireplace running here now. The potbelly's running to heat the house. So you want to have some smoke.
Because it's smoky anyway.
Yeah. And this is not poke your eye smoke. This is, there's a fire, right? You're being heated by fire. It's got lots of fruit flavors in it too. Like it's really a little sweet and smooth, a little bit of heat coming down. This is a Christmas time whiskey, 100%, and not particularly expensive. You can find this in the US, runs about $60, 46.3%. So that's up there. But I would also point out, this is not like a cask strength or anything. They're keeping that number there so they don't have to chill filter. So it doesn't go cloudy with a bit of ice. Not that I'd put ice in this. You're there for the peat, just drink it. It doesn't, you don't really want to do anything else with this at all. Although, if I was going to have some fun, this is a nice whiskey to make a burnt martini with. So just take a little splash of this whiskey, swirl it in the glass, and then drink it because it's whiskey, it's good. And then make your vodka martini, which is to say just cold vodka, and you'll have that little smoky hint of a burnt martini.
That's interesting. Instead of a vermouth, use some. Yeah,
a burnt is done with a Scotch wash, and This Scotch is particularly well suited.
Interesting.
Yeah, so and that's not a bad thing because you're not any whiskey. But it was fine. It was one of those finds in my local liquor store, and I'm like, I've never talked about those guys, and it's the only distillery on Mull at all. So that's it. And like I said, it's kind of debatable whether it should be there, but it's there.
Did you go in and say, "Hey, give me the Ledaig," or did you say, "Hey, do you have any of that Ledaig?"
No, what I was looking at the rack and I said, "What is that?"
Point. That's the solution.
And then I noticed it was on the Isle of Mull, and I was like, "Oh, well, that's one of the Hebrides Islands. I've never talked about that. Let's go get it."
Nice.
I'd always keep my Loop app on my phone to just double check if I talked about this, but this one definitely not. And then I'm looking at the name, and I was like, "There's no way that's pronounced Ledaig." So I looked it up. It's like, it's pronounced Ledaig, and I'm like, why? Well, okay,
why?
Because Gaelic is funny.
Ledaig.
Yeah.
D is pronounced ch.
So you know who you give this whiskey to? Someone
Paul
who likes a Lagavulin or a Bowmore. Give them a peated whiskey they've never had. And it's legit. It's old school. It's made by pros. The same guys who do Bunnahabhain, but it's from Mull, and it's the only one, and it's not outrageously expensive.
It's very pretty. Look at the little island.
They make a TV show with that particular shot in it about the Isle of Mull there. So
it looks like Doc Martin would be shot there, actually, but maybe it's some other TV show.
Yeah,
and this is the boats where they bring it over to the other side for the barreling.
Well, in 1798, when they got there, they burned the boats. It's like, you're not leaving this island.
You can't leave. You're here.
Population is, like I said, it's like 300 square mile island. It's not that small of an island, but there's only 3,000 people on it. It's not a big place.
Interesting. Oh, you brought us a fun little taste of the Hebrides.
Of the Inner Hebrides, yeah. And again, an island I hadn't spent a lot of time with because it was the only distillery. So it's great to have a find like that.
Yeah,
and,
no kidding.
If you're looking for a whiskey for an aficionado who likes peated whiskeys, this will be special. It really will.
Very nice. Thank you, Richard.